Hi, I'm old Sneelock. It's been a lot of fun today. You ever heard the phrase, that was good training, and referring to the Marines or the Army or the Navy or Air Force? Well, good training implies that it stresses you past your point. Today's been a good training day. The idea was to cut a hole in the ceiling of the bathroom and install a new light with an integral fan and get rid of the old fan and light that were up on the ceiling. The fan rattled like the dickens and it wasn't very efficient, and it just dumped into the attic. It didn't have an exhaust pipe. It didn't go out of the house. It just dumped into the attic, which is an extremely bad way to go. Well, I started by taking the fan out of the box, and then that's just a metal box that's anchored up into the ceiling, and the fan plugs in and you pull the fan out. I've had the fan out 2 or 3 times. Then I pulled the light down. I had the power to the light and the power to the fan both turned off. I'd taken my little tick tracer, this thing. Whenever it gets near power, it beeps. Just like that. So I checked out my lines, made sure that the power was off, made sure the switches were off, came down, turned off the breaker, turned the breaker back on, checked it, made sure that that was the right breaker, because this house has been rewired a couple of times. And the guy who initially put the wire in kind of went by guessing by golly. So I checked for power. Everything was okay. We had the breaker turned off. Everything was fine. Pulled the fan out of the ceiling. Had to cut it out of the plaster. It had been plastered in. The box had been anchored in. They did a really good job of installing that fan. That was there for the duration. It was fastened to the studs. They had boxed the studs in around it and then plastered the box in. So it was really solidly anchored. 4 roofing nails through the sides into the joists. Wasn't going to go anywhere. But me with a crowbar and a saw and a hammer and a pair of pliers and a chisel and a pry bar, got it out of there. So then I pulled the light down. There's just 2 wires coming down to the light. Checked them. Nothing. Dead. Pulled the wire nuts off and said, okay, that's good. I pulled the cover off the box. The box was anchored in. It was a 3-inch box. They haven't used 3-inch boxes in a long time. They use those round plastic ones now for the last 20 years anyways. But this was a 3-inch octagon box. It was anchored to a joist. Of course, the joist runs right over where I want to put my fan and my light. They had set their fan offset, but I wanted to have the light in the middle of the room, and that's right where the joist goes through. So I spent a little time fiddling with that, trying to get it out. And then I decided, okay, I'm done working this little hole. I cut out a hole big enough for the fan box on the light fan assembly. And I was going to have to go up and cut the joist. Now my house is built without rafters. It has joists running across the top. 2x8 joists. And they run across the short length of the house. That's why that's a 2x6 wall. On the one side of the bathroom, that's a supporting wall for the center of those joists. And I could look up into the attic through the hole. It's the first time I'd ever looked up into the attic. Been here 8 years, and there's been raccoons up in the attic. And we sealed off everything. There hadn't been any raccoons in there for a long time, but raccoons have a tendency to poop where they eat or poop where they live. And that kind of thing you just don't want to get in your lungs. They have a kind of virus that goes in and gives you something like mad cow disease. Don't need to go anywhere near that. But I thought, well, it's been 7 years since I sealed up the attic, and I know there hasn't been any animals in there. So I got out the respirator, you know, full rig. Don't want to have that stuff. I don't want to breathe that stuff in. Got the attic door open, went to climb into the attic. There was a 16-inch wide hole. If you look at me, I'm not 16 inches wide in any dimension. I could fit up through the 16-inch, going this way, not this way, going this way. But I would have had to have gone up through that hole and then bent my body on a 90-degree turn to go into the attic, sideways. I don't bend that way. There wasn't enough room going up into the top of the garage to get into the attic over the garage, because the garage attic is only about 3 feet high. That's not enough distance for me to get my head and shoulders and waist up to the point where I bend into the garage attic. Joists overhead in the garage too. So after trying to figure out how I was going to do that, realizing the only way to do it is to cut the hole bigger and reinforce the studs and replace the joist and stub off the joist and basically rebuild the hole, which can be done and will be done because there's work that I have to do up there. I decided to heck with it. I'm just going to cut a bigger hole in the bathroom ceiling and do my work up there, because I have a light in the hallway that I have to get wire to, which is further away than I could reach up through the hole where the light went. I needed to get it down through a 4-inch round plastic box, and I could get it possibly to the hole, but that hole is right under a joist. So trying to fish through the side of a 4-inch diameter hole with a wire from 5 feet away where I couldn't see it, I said, this just isn't going to work. So I got out the saw and I cut a hole in the ceiling, big enough for me to get my body through. But before I did that, I needed to move the junction box that the light was hooked to, because they had run power to that junction box, fed power to the light, dropped a 14-3 wire down to the switch, used that wire to power other things in that junction box where the switches were, the 3-gang receptacle box. When I went back to check the power with my little tick tracer, it was on. I said, that can't be. So I had Lydia come down in the basement over to the power panel, and I stood up there and checked the wires with a little tick tracer. She turned off the breaker, power would go off. I'd say, okay, we got it. Came down, I had to plug in an extension cord to get light into the room so that I could see to do the work that I needed to do, because I hadn't cut the ceiling out yet. I had to get that junction box moved. Plugged in the extension cord, went back up and checked, and I had power. Unplugged the extension cord, power's gone. I'm thinking, this is nuts. The extension cord has nothing to do with the circuit in that room. Okay, what's going on here? So I started digging around, and I have Lydia down here in the basement. We're flipping breakers and running up and down and checking, and I'm getting increasingly frustrated. Finally, we figured out what it was. They had bundled the wires together and joined them by soldering the joint. One wire had power to it. That fed that bundle of wires. When I checked the bundle with this, I got nothing. If I went along and checked the individual wires going to that bundle, the white wire was saying hot. It's a neutral, shouldn't be hot. And the black wire was saying hot. One wire that goes into that junction box is hot. And it was spliced into that bundle, but it didn't make contact. It wasn't hooked to anything. No power. So how in the hell that one wire hot? I still don't know. I turned off all the breakers, went in there with a flashlight, split the wires apart, stripped them down, spliced them together with wire nuts, taped up the wire nuts, did a good job on them, pulled the staples on the wires leading into that junction box because I had to move it over to the side, up onto the joist to get it out of the way. And it's okay to have a junction box in an attic as long as it's accessible. Well, this is really on the shaky side of accessible. Having it in a spot that I can't get to without cutting out joists and cutting out studs, it's not really what I would call accessible, but if I needed to, I could get in there. Turn off the main breaker, climb in, and do whatever I got to do after I cut the joists and the studs out. Or I could just take out the light in the bathroom and reach up through the hole and work on the junction box. So I guess it is accessible. It's just not easily accessible. Having done all that, I got the junction box mounted to the joist. I got the hole big enough to get my body up into the hole. I pulled the insulation back out of the way and got everything so that I can start working on it. I went to cut the joist because I have to cut the joist off and then stub in another joist. Went to cut the joist and the batteries on the Sawzall went dead. I'd been working so long that all 3 batteries on everything. Sawzall takes a lot of juice. I was cutting an 8-inch joist long ways, and I had cut through one, and I was halfway through the next one when the battery just died. And my other batteries were enough to run the little hammers and the little extension light, but wasn't enough poop to make that Sawzall work. So now I've got all the batteries on the charger, at least 2 of them. I got 2 chargers. I put 2 batteries on, and they'll be done in about 2.5 to 3 hours. So I'm going to get cleaned up and be done for today. This was to get the light changed. Nothing on this job has been what we expected. Normally, I changed the light in the other bathroom. I changed the switch in the other bathroom. I changed the fan in the other bathroom. Nowhere near this much trouble. This little bathroom is haunted. Somebody doesn't like it. If you want to find out what happens next, tune in tomorrow. We have a new video every day. Monday through Friday at noon, Saturday and Sunday at 9 a.m. And for all you guys that are stopping by, turns out that most of you guys are stopping by more than once. So if you're coming back, why not subscribe? And while you're at it, hit the notification bell. That way you'll get a notification when the next video comes up, even though it's on the schedule. Won't let you forget. If you have any suggestions for a new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching. Oh, and there's snippets of video of me trying to do things, but I was so frustrated that most of it is nothing that I'd want to broadcast. Thanks for watching.